Hello everyone, and welcome to Ubuntu Week. Yes, for you see, today is Monday, October the 20th, which is the 10-year anniversary of Ubuntu Linux. Perhaps the most popular Linux distribution for desktops that most newcomers use. Now, an admission here is that I used to use Ubuntu for quite some time. It used to be my primary, and while I don't use it as much as I did back then, I do go back to it every once in a while, because I do like Ubuntu in general, although there are a few things I don't like about it. But anyway, to start off this week, in VirtualBox, I have the first version of Ubuntu, which is version 4.10, which was released on this very day, 10 years ago, and when we go to full screen and put our mouse into it, we can see what this thing looked like. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is the word ugly. Yeah, even though I'm using this wallpaper on my main desktop, it's mainly for the fact that it's a anniversary special. I wouldn't be using this wallpaper if it was any other day, for the sake that it's very brown, very dull, and very ugly. Now I understand that Ubuntu was trying to be different, that most other desktops look blue or green or whatever, but brown, nah, very, very, very ugh. Anyway, let's look at the interface, which is the traditional two-panel look that Ubuntu had for quite some time, at least until 2011 when they started pushing out the Unity interface. Now, the thing is that I don't hate Unity as much as many others do, but I understand why Unity is so often regarded as bad. But anyway, let's look at what Ubuntu came with when it first came out. So first, let's go into Accessories in the Applications menu, and we can see we have an Archive Manager for zip files and all that. We have a calculator, which is very nice to have for any system. We have a character map for inserting special characters. We have a dictionary for looking up words, a text editor for creating and editing text documents, which is very nice. In the game section, we have the full GNOME game suite. Yeah, I do find it kind of sad that nowadays Ubuntu does not have the full game suite that it used to. I mean, nowadays it just comes with Solitaire here. Even though I do like this version of Solitaire, the fact is that they dropped so many of the other games to save up on space is kind of off-putting. And that makes it kind of bland, but other games are Attacks, which is a Versi-like game, Blackjack, 5 or more, 4 in a row, Connect 4 kind of thing, Free Cell Solitaire, Tetris Clone, Lango, which is for Versi, Sliding Block Puzzle, Mahjong, Mines, Minesweeper, Worm Maze, Robot Game, where you avoid robots, another mix and match kind of game, Stones, which you don't even see anymore, basically it's a collect diamonds kind of game, Tally, which is dice, poker-like game, and you have Tetrafx, which is a number matching puzzle game. And graphics, we have PostScript Viewer, which is nice to have, a regular image viewer for viewing images, the GIMP, which is set at version 2.0, and it still had that multi-windowed interface, nowadays you could put it into one interface and under one window, but back then you really couldn't do that with it. It didn't come with that until very recently, which is kind of really strange, but whatever. I still like the GIMP nonetheless. Next up is Xane. Xane for scanning stuff. GThumb Image Viewer, which is another image viewer on this. Basically, I do like GThumb a lot better, so I'm glad Ubuntu did decide to lob this in there, because I do think IVeGNOME kind of sucks. Under Internet, we have Evolution Mail for your email needs. You have Game Instant Messenger for IM chat, so, you could do that. You have GNOME Meeting, which is basically, internet chat kind of stuff, voice chat kind of thing. Now, Mozilla Firefox is something I will bring up, because if we go up here to Help and About Firefox, you can see it is at version 0.9.3, which tells you how old this thing really is, because this is one of the first versions of Firefox to ever be released. I mean, Firefox was still fresh, wet underneath the ears when this came out, so yeah, it's kind of interesting in that regard. We also have a terminal server client for your terminal server needs, so you could, do remote computer stuff, XChat IRC for IRC chat stuff. I'm not going to go into that. Under multimedia, we have a CD player, which is very funny because nobody really listens to CDs anymore. We have a music player, though, which we could, used for, playing our various MP3 files and stuff like that. We have a CD ripper, so we could, rip those CDs into our computer so we could listen to them later on our MP3 player or whatever. We have a sound recorder, which is nice. We have a movie player, Totem. Plays various video formats, including DVDs, if you haven't codecs installed. There wasn't really too many video formats way back in 2004. You really didn't have much of a YouTube back then, if at all. So we're not going to get into that right now. Volume control, just volume level, self-explanatory, not going to go into that. Now, in the Office section, we have Evolution Groupware, which is calendar, synchronization, that kind of nonsense. I'm not going to go into that. We have the full Open Office suite, which is very interesting. So if we go up here to the word processor, we can see that this is version 1.1.2, which is one of the first versions of Open Office to come out. So that tells you exactly where everything evolved. Ubuntu just came at the right time, at the right place, where everything was still fresh and brand new, where everything here was still relatively, unknown or starting to come into its time, like Firefox was at this stage. I'm not going to show off every last Office app, but we do have drawing, we have create templates and, spreadsheets, presentation, printer administration, another spreadsheet. Where's that? No, that's the other spreadsheet. I forgot about this. I actually did forget about that. That's for, yeah, I'm not going to get into that. I forgot all about that. It's been so long. Anyway, underneath the system tools, we have a bug reporting tool, which is very nice to have. We have a configuration editor, also very nice to have, and I'll show you why. We have a floppy formatter. Yes, once upon a time we were still using floppies when this first came out. Very, very, very nostalgic there. Networking tools for setting up network information and all that. New login without logging out, which is nice to have. A root terminal, so we could perform administration underneath the terminal environment, which is nice to have. We also have a run as different user, which is also a super user mode kind of thing, which is nice to have. System log, which I'm not going to go into, but system monitor is something interesting, because once we go into resource monitor, we can see that this is chewing up very little. Yeah, even in 2004 standards, this was very, very small footprint stuff. It's amazing that nowadays Ubuntu really needs so much memory. It's almost gotten as bad as Microsoft Windows on how much memory it really wants to use at a certain given time. Yeah, Ubuntu is really no longer really good at memory management. It's really poop in that respect. But anyway, we have a traditional, regular, everyday terminal, so you could do terminal commands if you wanted to. We have the help documentation on here, so you could learn about your system, how-tos and various likes, that kind of thing, which is very helpful. Now, you do have the About Ubuntu feature, which actually does nothing, because the About Ubuntu page has been down forever now, and it's kind of become redundant and useless. The Run Applications thing is here, so if we wanted to, say, start up Firefox, for example, we could do that. Underneath the computer section, we have access to our home directory. We have access to desktop, our disks, our network shares. We could search for files, and you have a list for recent documents here. So if I had any recent documents, they would be listed here. I could search for the files, as I mentioned, maybe. So if I had any files on here I wanted to search for, I could search for them. That's nice to have. Underneath the desktop preferences, we have assistive technology for, blind users and stuff like that. I believe that is what that is for. Desktop background basically changes the background, but since there's only 3 frickin' wallpapers and 3 frickin' settings on here, and they all look pretty ugly, I'm not going to go into that. You can change how files are managed, which is nice. Change the fonts, edit keyboard settings, edit keyboard shortcuts, change menus and toolbars, which is something I really miss in later versions of Ubuntu and GNOME in general. I really wish they would bring this back, but hey, they want less features in their system and make it really useless to use, so that's their decision. They're kind of crazy that way. But anyway, we have mouse settings, we have network proxy, we can sync to a Palm OS device. From what I remember, it did work somewhat okay, not with all Palm devices, but if you had a certain one, it would work. You could select preferred applications, open up a remote desktop, configure management of storage devices, very nice. Change the screensaver, which is something I do miss. I do miss the screensaver option in most Linux distributions. I mean, I understand that we're no longer using CRT monitors, but there's something nostalgic about running a screensaver and seeing all the pretty effects. I do miss that instead of just having a plain blank screen where you just type in your name. It's kind of boring nowadays. You can configure your sessions, so if you wanted to have a certain application open when this opens, you can do that. Edit the sound settings, change the theme, which is very nice. You actually have a multiple amount of themes on here, so if you wanted to change it to a more pleasant theme, like the glider theme, for example, you could change it to that. You also have configuration for the windows themselves, the window properties. In the system configuration section, you have device manager, manages devices, is self-explanatory. Change the login screen. You could configure a network, enable printing, screen resolution, change that if you wanted to. Synaptic Package Manager. Now this is something I want to get into right now, so let me go through this and close that off, because the thing about Synaptic is that it was the piece of software that actually got me using Linux in the first place. I started off on Windows XP as my primary system, and basically I started transitioning over to Linux, and I was wondering how you installed software. I was so used to how Windows installed things, go to a website, download a .exe file, and try to install that, but that doesn't quite work in Linux, and somebody suggested to me, instead of using command line, use a package manager of some kind, and Synaptic was the one available to me at the time because I was using Debian. Yeah, surprisingly enough, I actually started up on Debian. I actually went to Ubuntu later on because of I was on Debian stable and I didn't see how to upgrade software on a regular basis, and I heard that SID was very, very, unstable, and it still is, but yeah, Synaptic was a good helper tool for me for getting into the Linux ecosystem. It's very, very cool tool. It's still my favorite package manager, no matter what system I'm on. I don't use any Debian-based systems right now, but when I do use Synaptic to manage my packages, even though I do no apt commands, but whatever. You can configure your time and date, which is nice to have. You can add users and edit groups. You could take a screenshot, you could lock the screen, you could log out, which is very nice to have. You could mark stuff in your calendar. You could actually set up a calendar and sync that. So, you know, that's what I was talking about with Evolution Setup Assistant. I'm not going to go into that because that's just a bunch of nonsense. You have a volume icon, so you could, you know, move your mouse over that up and down on the scroll buttons. You could change the volume. Bottom panel have the show desktop, virtual desktops down here, trash, which is nice to have, and that's pretty much it. One thing I do like that they did give a configuration editor for this, because I really don't like, I really didn't like Nautilus and how it was set up at this time, where you had those little windows without any navigation on them. So if we go here to Preferences, you can click on Always Used Browser, if I can here, and close that off. When I open up Nautilus, the file manager, this time, it will go up like that, and you know, it makes things far more easier to navigate. But outside of that, yeah, Ubuntu 4.10, I did try it. I didn't like it. I mean, even as a first release, it wasn't really all that good. But it was the beginning of something I think was sort of good in its own respect. I mean, you know, user-friendly Linux distribution that pretty much anybody could use. Yeah, I kind of like that. No matter how you feel about Ubuntu or Canonical, they did try to push Linux to a more user-friendly base down the road. But anyway, if I had to rate Ubuntu 4.10, it would be indeed a 4 out of 10. It was a very poor showing. There wasn't much here that Debian didn't already offer, or Fedora didn't already offer. It was just this bland-looking thing without too many things to set it apart from the others. Now, over time, it would stand out and sometimes like a sore thumb, but we won't get to that right now. Anyway, tomorrow I'll be skipping ahead a little bit because I'm not going to cover the 5 series. You know, that would be, you know, more nonsense for me to talk about, besides they're essentially the same thing as this, only with slightly different modifications to it, and most of those features were ported into the next version I'm going to cover, which is version 6.06. The first long-term support release of Ubuntu, and the first version of Ubuntu I actually used full-time. But anyway, that's my review of Ubuntu 4.10. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you around tomorrow with my next video in the series. See you then, and bye-bye.